Hello, 5th and 6th grade. So I'm making this video for both of you guys. This week is 5th grade. Next time will be for 6th grade. So don't freak out that I'm saying 5th or 6th grade. So if I reference either grade, stick with me on this. We are working on 5th grade. I'm going to be addressing you first mainly this week. We're working on how to classify a living organism. So this is an introduction to 7th grade in a way, 5th and 6th grade, but this is something that 5th grade you have to learn is basically what is an organism and how do we put it in categories. So let's go with notes. So first off, what is an organism? Get our notes out. Organism. So we're going on bullet points and everything here with your notes. And I always mention the vocabulary, so this is a great way to keep going with it. This is really easy. Organism is just a living thing. So anything that's alive is considered an organism. Even at times, some bacteria can be considered an organism, but mainly plants and animals. And humans are organisms because we're considered an animal, not a plant. We're a mammal. So with that in mind, there are 5 things that classify a living thing as an organism. It has to have these 5 things in order to be considered an organism. And it's very important to know these 5 things because if they don't fit this category, they're not going to fit into the classification of living things whatsoever. They're considered non-living. Now, 5th grade, we've gone over living and non-living. We're taking this a step further and now really diving in a little bit more detail into what is an organism. Okay, so the first one, underneath organism, I'm just going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to help you guys keep it straight. So, it's made up of cells. All living things are made of cells because that's what helps us grow, basically. You know, we multiply them and everything. We will be diving more into this as you get into 7th grade some more. So my current 6th graders, you guys will definitely be seeing that. And I think we even spend a week here diving a little bit into cells. So number 2 is that it grows and develops. So I'm going to put DEV. Made of cells, grows and develops. Can be considered a living thing, organism. It consumes energy. So for plants, consuming energy is the sun's light. And for humans, it's through food, basically, and breathing. So it's taking in oxygen, and it's also through whatever we eat. So a living organism must consume energy in order to be able to function. It will reproduce. So that's where the life cycle comes in. So it starts it all over again. When it's adult, then it will have babies. And the last thing is that it responds to stimuli. You might be wondering, what does that mean, responds to stimuli? Stimuli is when something happens outside of the body, the plant or the animal. And response is how you react to it. So if it's very cold outside, that's the stimuli. Cold weather, the response is that you're going to try to do, for humans, we try to make ourselves warm. So we're going to maybe we do this. Basically, it's one way. And might be that we trigger, our brain triggers, hey, get out of the cold, get warm and everything. So plants respond to sunlight. So some plants will literally turn themselves towards the sunlight, and that's the response to stimuli. Something's happened on the outside in their environment, and it's how you react, how our brain triggers us. So there are the 5 things that make up an organism. Once again, an organism is any living thing. So moving on from there, now that we know what a living thing is, what qualifies it, classifies it as a living thing, as an organism, this is when you start putting in how can we, if I gave you a picture of an animal and you don't know the name of that animal, then I can give you clues to figure out what kind of animal it is based on the characteristics, the structures, the adaptations, the inherited traits, the learned behaviors, all kinds of stuff based on that animal. A lot of times we just do it by the look of it. It's called a dichotomous key, but we're not getting into that. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to show you guys that the way that how we go from the big class, the biggest group of the organisms, the living things, and we've narrowed it down to the smallest things, so we actually know the actual scientific name for that animal or that living thing. So, get out the rest of your notes. You're still going with me. I already used red. Let's use the green. We're going to now move on to classification. So, you can't classify. Classify means to sort, to put into categories. So that's what we're doing. Not classify, classification. Classification. There's your word. Right there. To give you a little history, okay, this is just quick, like, notes that we're going in, because we dive a lot deeper in this in 7th grade. It was classification for living things is done in what we call a hierarchy. So it starts really high, like big group, and as you go down the triangle, then it starts getting smaller and everything. You can narrow it down. So let me spell out hierarchy here. Based upon features, like I was talking about, characteristics, that an organism has in common. So if I gave you one picture, and one of the clues on the dichotomous key was the bird has a long beak. Well, you can easily tell if the picture has a short beak, then you know that it can't be like this half of the hierarchy, the classification. So I've already eliminated half the birds. And then I can go and look at these birds. And then I'll have, it has webbed feet, which is kind of weird for a bird, but some of them do. And then you start narrowing it down more and more. That's how the classification system works. Now, what is in the classification system? This is the order that it goes. Look, Italian, mamma mia. This is the order that it goes in. Okay, so I'm going to start from the top and go down. I'll get a new whiteboard for this one. Okay, so you're going to draw an upside down triangle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, and you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got to divide it into 8 parts. Okay, so to help me keep them all kind of spaced out, I divided half, and then I went half again, half again. So that way you have it. It doesn't have to be perfect. But this is to give you an idea. This is one way that you will see in a lot of textbooks how the classification of living things is actually performed. So in the very top is called domain. The next one's kingdom. And each of these, like the domain, there's a couple of them. We're not going into that details. You just need to know that there's a classification system and everything. And they start off huge. And then as you start narrowing it down, because you have little features, characteristics of that picture that you're trying to identify, you start getting into specific kingdoms and domains. Phylum is next. That actually starts with a P. So this is what I have so far. Domain, kingdom, phylum. And then class. And I know what you're probably thinking. There's no way I'm going to remember this. I'm going to show you a trick. Okay? And it's actually part of your experiment challenge this week. Okay? Class and then order. Probably thinking, where did these all come from? We'll learn about the history when you come to 7th grade. Like I said, I just want you to know that and be aware what an organism is, what qualifies it, and then how do we identify it. Family. Genus and species. Species is the very last one. Okay, so there's your order. There's 8 parts, and we start very big, and we go all the way down to the little. Now, when it comes to naming a particular living organism, living thing. We use the genus and the species. Those are the only two parts we use because these are very specific to that one type of living thing. By using these two names, they're very scientific. So Homo sapien is how we say human in our genus and species form, because that's what we're known as human beings. Now, how do I remember this order? There are what we call mnemonic devices, and mnemonic devices are fancy words put together that make a random phrase, and you're like, you never, ever, ever forget it. Like when you're remembering north, south, east, west. I grew up with never eat soggy waffles. It's what I learned. But then I'm learning that nowadays it's like never eat sour watermelons or something. So, it's never eat sour watermelons. It's kind of like how you put the planets in order and everything. Though it begs to differ if Pluto is still part of planets. Anyway, so this is the random mnemonic phrase that you will hear very often. It does change just a tad, but not quite. It is Dear King Philip came over. You still with me? Dear King Philip came over for great spaghetti. And it's so crazy how our minds work in this way, but this is what helps you remember the order of the classification of living things. Dear King Philip came over for great spaghetti. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class. Remember, it's the first letter. Order, family, genus, species. Bam! Probably just blowing your mind. Okay? So as you're going through this, if you don't like this one, then your experiment challenge this week is to create a whole new mnemonic device to help you remember. Remember, the more out there it is, the harder it is to remember. This one's a little easier because we have a lot of things that have to do with King Philip or King Robert or something, but it's just nice and simple. I like spaghetti, came over, ate, good to go. Okay, so if you create one, you want to do one that's good for you, but also something that's really realistic that actually would. I mean, this could really happen. I don't know. Do we have a King Philip nowadays? Go research it. So, what is an organism? How do we classify it? This is breaking it down into the 8 categories from top to bottom. Now, how do we name the organism? I mentioned it briefly. We use the genus and the species. This is called, it's also one of your vocabulary words, binomial nomenclature. Okay, yeah. In other words, the scientific name. So let's write that out. Probably thinking, how in the world do I spell that? Well, it's a good thing that I have it up on lesson plans, and I have it right here for you guys. Here you go. Look at this. You guys are learning 7th grade stuff and everything. Binomial nomenclature. Yep, it's a mouthful. Even I have trouble saying it at times, but you know what? That's okay. So let's bullet point it. Okay, it actually means a name with 2 terms. It's literally what it translates as. Bio, for life and everything, nomial, number. A name, forgot my parentheses. A name with 2 terms, genus and species. It's made up of the genus and species. And I'm going to point something specific out here for what I'm writing on notes. Okay? It involves the genus and species. Go back to Miss Hamry and think right now. What do the 3 lines represent in grammar? Capitalized, right? So genus is always capitalized. Species is always lowercase. Okay? Capitalized, it's like starting a sentence. And then, because in that way, you can identify which is which. And it's very specific, like I said. And this is how we identify animals and organisms all around the world. These names are global. There's no changing them. So if somebody doesn't speak English, the spelling is using English words or letters a lot of times, because there's symbols in like Japanese and stuff. But you can identify that is a global name. So how we identify as humans, that's global. That's like across the scientific community, no matter what. So it's really cool how they came up with this whole way to classify living things. Now, we're going to break it down a little bit more. I'm only going to show you guys each of these breaks down, and we don't go into very specifics because by the time you get down to species, you're talking like trillions of like names and stuff. But for kingdom, domain is pretty like 2 or 3 of them. But for kingdom, we break it down as such. Okay, so we're going to pop out from the kingdom here. Okay, and there are 6 different kingdoms. And this is where we start getting, well, wait a minute, is bacteria a living thing? Yes, it is, guys, because it consists of a cell and it qualifies for all 5 of those classifications or the details that I said earlier. Plants, these are the kingdoms. Animals, fungi, protists. So you got some fancy words going on here. Arachnia, bacteria, and eubacteria. That has to do with how many cells they have and are made up of. Okay, so here's your 5 kingdoms. All right, this is just to make you aware, so I would like you to write down your notes, so if you need to reference it during the enrichment activities or anything, then you have it. It's not going to be required too much for the homework this week, but my goal is for you is to walk away knowing, okay, how do I classify a living thing, and what category do I put it in? How do I find the name? So, it's amazing how we come up with this stuff, right? Okay, with all that being said, that's it for your notes. So, 5th grade, this is give you an introduction. Actually, 6th grade and 5th grade. This is give you an introduction to 7th grade. But more importantly, 5th grade, you have to walk away with knowing that what a living thing is and that there is a classification system. So, with that being said, your homework for this week. You guys are going to be doing an animal classification worksheet where you guys are actually going to go through, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, and you're going to label out the parts of the classification system and describe them. Even get down to the point where you'll be working on naming an animal. So, if I remember correctly, but you want to look up Animal Classification Worksheet -6th grade is what it is. So 5th grade, pay attention to what I'm saying. It says 6th grade on the assignment, but that's the one you're looking for, and that's the one that's available for you this week. Your experiment for this week, like I said, come up with a new mnemonic device, a new one, to help you remember the order of the classification system. And there's no quiz for either of you guys, if I remember off the top of my head. But there are plenty of enrichment activities for you guys. So earn those lab points. Have fun. So quick review. Nothing's really changed from the last couple weeks. 1, notes to help you for upcoming quizzes or whatever you need. 2, work on your homework assignment. 3, there are vocabulary words. A lot of the words that I went over today. 4, enjoy some enrichment activities. So if you're struggling still to understand this, that's what those enrichment activities are for. There's a Jeopardy up there, so challenge your mom and dad or a sibling and see who knows this stuff better. Especially if they're older than you, then you can really be like, oh yeah, I know this stuff. But that's all I got for you guys. So baby's probably coming in the next week or 2 to give you guys a heads up. That's what I'm thinking. So you guys will find out. So have a great week. Take your time and can't wait to see you guys again. Bye.